Hello and welcome to Bags of Action. My name's Steve and this is a review of Outside the Wire from 2021. The film is directed by Mikael Hafström and it's written by Rowan Athal and Rob Yescombe. The film stars Anthony Mackie, Damson Idris, Enzo Cilenti and Emily Beecham. Anthony Mackie has obviously been in a lot of Marvel films and he's done a couple of the Netflix shows. He did the second season of Altered Carbon. Damson Idris, I know from Black Mirror. Emily Beecham was also in the fantastic Amazon show Into the Badlands, where she played the widow. For those who haven't seen it, it's a fantastic show and you should definitely check it out. And in that show, although it's slightly heightened, it showed off her amazing acting abilities and her martial arts. So seeing her again in this was quite nice, because it's the first major role that I've seen her in since that TV show. So, what is the film about? In the near future, a drone pilot sent into a war zone finds himself paired with a top-secret android officer on a mission to stop a nuclear attack. Now, before I'd seen the film, I'd only watched the trailer, and it wasn't really clear that Anthony Mackie's character was an android. At first, I thought he was a human who'd suffered some sort of catastrophic injury and had been repaired with bionics of some kind, but then later I found out in the film that he is actually an android. The film is set in a slightly near future where the Balkan states and Russia have become this new frontier zone. I think it's set in 2038. And for some reason, they've developed robotic officers, or robotic soldiers, I should say. These are in addition to ordinary Marines that go out and fight. Now, the reason for this isn't particularly clear. Maybe just that technology has moved on a bit. But if that were the case, why would you then also have so many human soldiers running around? I don't really know. They don't go into that. I guess it was kind of a bridge so that when they explain you have this android officer, it isn't too much of a leap. But it would almost been more interesting just to see the Anthony Mackie character, because these other robotic soldiers, which they're called Gumps, are pretty stupid. They seem to be very good at what they do, but they aren't particularly bright. They don't have any intelligence. They don't have a personality. It's almost like a camera eye or a webcam strapped to a head, and the body is just that of a normal robot soldier. So they don't have any personality or anything, they're just kind of drones. There's a lot going on in this film, or at least that's how they try to portray it. It starts off with this fairly simple premise, as I've described, but then it begins to delve into other areas, and I think this is where it starts to run into some problems. It was trying to be a commentary on a number of different things. Now, on the surface, the premise that I described sounds quite good. These two people go into a war zone to try and stop a nuclear attack. If they'd kept the plot simpler and tighter, then I think it would have been a better film. There's some commentary in here about the American industrial complex, because the film starts, it's not a spoiler to say it, with the drone pilot doing something remotely. He's conducting a war from America while soldiers in the ground are doing something much more dangerous, and all he does is sit chewing gummy bears, which we see back in the desert in America while they're on this war zone in Europe, getting under fire, seeing their colleagues die, and he's just pushing a button and killing people. He doesn't feel anything, and they say several times during the film, oh, you're really kind of cut off, you're really kind of unemotional, and of course they're playing up the whole thing of, oh yes, well, is he a robot and is he not, and shouldn't he feel something more, and he's very cut off, versus the Anthony Mackie character who's completely the opposite way. He's an android who swears a lot, he's very emotional, he has a temper, he's quite violent. And it's obvious from seeing how his character interacts with other people that he cares to some degree. He cares about more than just doing his job. So there's that. There's a commentary on morality, there's a commentary on war, and a commentary on drone pilots and conducting war from not being on the ground in the thick of it. And this is something that the Harp character, played by Damson Idris, has to learn across the film. It's all about him caring about individuals, growing to care about the people that he sees at a distance, and not just being cut off from it. That's one part of the story. Another part of the story is about race. It is obviously quite unusual, even in modern day, to have two male black actors in the lead of a film, and we have that here with them. There's a commentary at one point about the fact that Anthony Mackie's character has been made in the model of someone who isn't blonde hair and blue-eyed, and it slips by very, very quickly, so that's in there too. There's a commentary about war and how it actually affects the people on the ground once the soldiers have gone and left, people having to pick up the pieces and try and rebuild their lives once they've apparently done their job, as it were, which is solving the conflict, which of course is only part of the problem. So already, and this is even before I've touched the story about the fact that these soldiers are entering a very difficult war-torn area, fighting rebels, trying to protect the locals, trying to bring in this vaccine in return for information to hunt down this supposed terrorist who wants this nuclear device. There's a lot going on. They're trying to put too much into this film. There's also the stuff about humanity, which I've mentioned, to do with Harp versus Captain Leo, who's the android, and which of them is more human. Focusing on some of the positives, the action scenes are really, really good, really kinetic. Anthony Mackie is fantastic in them. They're really well cut and directed. You feel the pain of people when they get beat up by Captain Leo, who's faster, stronger, and tougher than most humans. So that's really good. The special effects with the Gumps, these kind of robotic soldiers, I really liked that. And you had different models between the Russian versions, which are big and chunky and powerful, versus the American versions, which are quite interesting and sleek and dynamic. The film doesn't pull its punches at any point, given that it's talking about collateral in war in terms of people dying. They touch on that a few times, and even in action scenes where the heroes, in inverted commas, are doing their thing, you see innocent people caught in the middle being killed. And they're not just shot in the shoulder, they die. They get shot in the head and they're left there, which of course leaves Harp's character to stare at the bodies and try and think about what he's been doing and the actual people on the ground again. They do this a couple of times throughout the film. They really try and hammer the points home and also remind you of the plot by having Harp have these flashbacks with voiceovers stressing the point, which really weren't unnecessary. If you're paying attention to the film and you're not scrolling on your phone, then you don't need the reminder. It's pretty obvious what's going on. But because they keep adding all of these other layers and trying to talk to you and at you during the film, whilst trying to tell this other story, it just begins to muddy the water a bit. The film does have a bit of a Training Day feel to it at times, where you've got this older, grizzled cop. In this case, he happens to be an android officer with the younger guy who doesn't know what it's really like on the street, or in this case, on the front line. So there's a little bit of that, but this isn't really much of a buddy cop thing in any way. They aren't laughing and cracking jokes like in Bad Boys. There's a couple of moments of humour, and they try and touch on that and try and bring some warmth to the two characters, but no sooner have they done it that they then realise how different they are from one another. Leo's making fun of him for being naive and not knowing what's going on. He's mocking the other guy for being a robot and being like 5 years old or something. So they've tried to lift it up with humour at times, but overall, the mood of the film is quite sombre and not nearly as amusing as they think it is. My guess is they did it to try and balance the quite harsh action scenes and some of the scenes where people die and get left on the ground, and then we just move on and we see them, their bodies just lying there bleeding out. Overall, I came away thinking the film was okay. It was entertaining, it had some good action, but I think the script really needed some work. It clocks in at just under 2 hours, so it felt a little bit bloated. I think if they trimmed out some of the unnecessary complexities in the story that they introduced, they tried to tell too many things and it felt very pulled in different directions. I think if they streamlined that, they'd cut down some of the unnecessary bits, and also if they explained a couple of things just a little bit more. Like, we don't know why Captain Leo was created, that he's some kind of prototype is what I can guess, but we don't know who made him or why or for what purpose. And there's a bit of fluff about his programming and stuff, but it's very, very light again before they move on because the story has to keep going. So it was okay. It was a passable film for watching an evening, but I really struggled with it at times, and it did hold my attention. So I'm actually going to be fairly generous and give this 3 out of 5 and say, have you seen Outside the Wire? If so, get in touch and let us know. You can email us, you can come onto our Facebook group. If you like what we do, you can support us on Ko-fi. We'd really appreciate that if you want us to buy a coffee there. We have new episodes coming out every week, so don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, and we'll be back soon.